The court sent forgotten Princess Mira Vale to feed the dying white pup before Alpha King Dorian's morning throne. By dawn, they expected the pup to die in her arms and prove both of them useless to royal blood. By midnight, it would open its silver eyes and name the man who murdered the king's father. The wolf nursery of Veahold was colder than any throne room. It had been carved beneath the eastern wing of the palace, where moonlight reached only through narrow silver windows, and the stone floor smelled faintly of milk, herbs, and old blood. Royal wolf pups were born there, tested there, blessed there, and when necessary, quietly removed there before the court had to admit weakness had entered the bloodline. Tonight, the court had gathered around the lowest cradle, not to bless it, to watch it fail. Inside the cradle lay the white pup. It was smaller than Mira had expected. Its fur was pale as snow under moonlight, but dull at the roots. Its ribs moved too slowly. Its tiny paws twitched as if it were running through a dream too far away to reach. Around its neck hung a thin silver thread, tied with a black mourning bead. No royal pup had ever worn mourning before death. That was what made the court smile. Mira stood beside the cradle, in a plain blue-gray dress, too simple for a princess, and too fine for a servant. That was how she had lived all her life, caught between names no one wanted to use. She was Princess Mira Vale by blood, but no one called her that, unless they meant to remind her how little it mattered. Forgotten princess, quiet branch, spare girl, the daughter of a dead second queen, whose portrait had been moved to a hallway no one used. Mira had no army behind her, no powerful maternal house, no court faction whispering her name in marriage negotiations. She had been raised in unused rooms, summoned only when ceremony required a royal girl to stand somewhere decorative and silent. But the cruelest thing was not being hated. Hatred meant someone remembered you. Mira had been forgotten so completely that even insults often arrived late. Lady Isolde, the favored lunar candidate, stood near the nursery arch in a white velvet gown trimmed with silver fox fur. Her golden hair was pinned beneath a moonstone comb, and her smile had the softness of a knife wrapped in silk. How fitting, Isolde said, a forgotten princess for a forgotten pup. Soft laughter moved through the nursery. Mira looked at the white pup instead of the court. Its breath hitched. Her hands closed around the small feeding bowl they had given her. Warm goat milk mixed with crushed moonroot. Not enough to save it, just enough to make her look responsible when it died. Lord Regent Calric Voss stood beside the cradle, tall and silver-haired, dressed in black mourning robes, despite the fact that no death had yet been declared. He was the dead king's younger brother, and he had ruled beside Dorian since the old king's death, carrying himself like a man who had turned grief into law. The pup has refused every royal handler, Calric said. Every healer, every wolf, mother, every blood-scented nurse. Perhaps a quiet hand will trouble it less. Mira heard what he meant. A useless hand. A hand no one would mourn if the pup's sickness spread. Across the nursery, Alpha King Dorian Vare stood beneath the carved moon arch, not seated, not relaxed, not fully part of the court. He was broad-shouldered, black-haired, and dressed in dark ceremonial armor with a wolf fur mantle clasped at his throat. On one hand, he wore his father's ring, a heavy silver band, marked with the old king's claw crest. He had not removed it in 6 years. His eyes were pale gray, cold enough to still a room, but tonight they looked restless, not weak. Never that. Dorian had become king young, after his father was said to have fallen to rebel wolves at the northern pass. The court called him Ironborn, because grief had not bent him. Mira thought grief had bent him. It had simply bent him inward. His gaze moved from the dying pup to the bowl in Mira's hands. For one breath, she felt seen, not kindly, not softly, but directly, as if he had noticed that the humiliation was arranged too neatly. Then Ceolric spoke before the moment could become anything dangerous. "The forgotten princess will feed the pup." Dorian's jaw tightened. If every healer failed, why bring the court to witness another failure? Ceolric smiled faintly. "Because royal weakness must be witnessed before it is cut away. Otherwise rumor grows teeth." The words made the white pup whimper, not loudly, barely enough to hear. Mira heard it. Dorian heard it too. His hand moved slightly, thumb brushing over his father's ring. Ceolric noticed. "The pup suffers, Your Majesty," he said. "Mercy may be necessary before dawn." Dorian's face hardened. Mira understood then. This was not only her humiliation, it was his. The last white pup of the royal litter was dying, and the court wanted the king to watch it be declared useless. If he ordered its death, he would seem strong. If he hesitated, they would whisper that grief had made him sentimental. Ceolric had placed Mira between the king and the knife, a forgotten girl, holding a dying thing. Easy to blame, easy to erase. A nurse pushed Mira forward. The feeding bowl trembled in her hands, but she did not spill it. Lady Isolde tilted her head. "Careful, princess. If it dies while you feed it, perhaps at last someone will remember you did something." Mira looked at her then, only once. That would still be more than being remembered for waiting beside a throne you have not earned. The nursery went silent. Isolde's smile vanished. Ceolric's eyes sharpened. Dorian looked at Mira as if he had never heard her voice before. Mira turned back to the cradle before her courage could betray how hard her heart was beating. The pup's eyes were closed. Its nose was dry. Its small body seemed hardly heavier than folded cloth when Mira slipped one hand beneath its head. The moment her skin touched its fur, the nursery candles bent toward her, not from wind, from recognition. Mira froze. The pup inhaled, a deep breath, too deep for something dying. A lullaby rose in Mira's throat. She did not know the words, but the pup did. Ceolric's hand moved toward the knife at his belt. Dorian saw it. "Do not," the king said. The regent's hand stopped. Mira lowered the bowl to the pup's mouth, but it did not drink. Instead, its tiny paw pressed against her wrist. Beneath its thin fur, a silver pulse moved, like moonlight trapped under skin. Mira felt the pulse answer somewhere in her own blood. Not power, not yet. A memory she did not own. A woman humming over a cradle. A wolf pup crying in the dark. A man's voice broken by betrayal, whispering, "Hide the child where court eyes do not look." Mira gasped. The pup's eyes opened. Silver, not pale gray, not royal gold. Silver like a blade under moon water. Every wolf in the nursery lowered its head. Even the carved wolf heads along the cradle rail seemed to bow. Dorian went utterly still. Ceolric's face lost all warmth. The white pup looked at Mira first, then past her, at the Alpha King. Its tiny mouth opened. When it spoke, the voice was not a pup's. It was a dying man's voice. Low, torn, familiar enough to break the room. "Dorian." The king stopped breathing. His father's ring cracked across his finger. The pup spoke again. "I was not killed at the northern pass." Mira clutched the pup tighter as silver light poured from its eyes. The nursery doors slammed shut. Ceolric whispered, "Impossible." Mira lifted the pup higher, though her hands shook, then let the impossible finish speaking. The white pup turned its head toward Ceolric, and the dead king's voice filled the wolf nursery. "My brother held the knife. My brother held the knife." The words did not echo. They struck. Every wolf in the nursery remained bowed, their muzzles low to the cold stone floor. The carved wolf heads along the cradle rails glowed faintly silver. Moonlight spilled through the narrow windows and gathered around Mira's arms, where the dying white pup no longer looked dying at all. It looked awake. Dorian stared at the pup, as if the world had split open in the shape of his father's voice. His father's ring had cracked across his finger, one silver line cutting through the old claw crest. Blood welled beneath it, where the metal bit into his skin, but he did not seem to feel it. Kelric was the first to move. He laughed once, softly, wrongly. "My king," he said, voice heavy with sorrow. "Grief can make even memory cruel." No one answered. Kelric turned to the court, spreading one hand in a gesture of calm command. "The pup is death. Mad. Royal pups born too weak often carry fragments of old voices. That is why mercy is sometimes required before sickness becomes spectacle." The white pup shivered in Mira's arms. Not from weakness, from anger. Mira held it closer. Its tiny heart beat against her palm, fast but stronger than before. The silver thread and black mourning bead around its neck tightened, as if trying to choke the voice back into silence. Mira slid one finger beneath the thread. Kelric saw. "Do not touch that." The command snapped through the room. Mira froze. For all her life, commands had reached her through other people's certainty. "Sit there. Stand there. Smile. Be quiet. Leave before the heirs enter." Do not ask why your mother's portrait was moved, but the pup's heartbeat pressed against her hand. A lullaby still trembled in her throat. She did not know the words, but the pup did. Mira looked at Kelric. "What is this thread?" Kelric's eyes cooled. "A mourning charm. For the living?" A murmur moved through the nursery. Lady Isolde stepped forward, recovering her polished cruelty. "Princess, do not pretend wisdom because a sick animal made a noise." Mira's eyes did not leave Kelric. A sick animal did not know the king's name. Dorian moved, then, only one step, but the nursery changed. Every guard straightened. Every noble went still. Even Isolde lowered her gaze. Dorian's voice was quiet. "Remove the thread." Kelric turned toward him slowly. "Your Majesty, I advise against that. I did not ask for counsel." For the first time, the regent's face hardened enough to show the man beneath the mourning robes. "The pup's body is failing," Kelric said. "If the thread is removed, whatever madness remains inside, it may rupture the cradle bond. It could kill the animal." Mira felt the trap. If she removed it, and the pup died, Kelric would blame her. If she left it, the voice might be silenced. The court would call the accusation grief, sickness, or her own strange influence. A forgotten princess was easy to turn into a stain. Dorian looked at Mira, not commanding, waiting. The room seemed to close around her. Mira's hand shook beneath the pup's throat. She had never been trusted with anything important. Not a treaty, not a title, not a door key. Now the king and the court were staring at her fingers, as if truth itself might break beneath them. The pup opened its silver eyes wider. The dead king's voice came again, weaker this time. "Cradled blood remembers what killers bury." Kelric's hand moved, fast, toward the knife at his belt. Dorian's sword was out before the blade cleared leather. Steel rang through the nursery. Kelric's knife fell to the floor between them. The court gasped. Dorian's sword pointed at his uncle's throat. No one moved. Kelric's expression smoothed again, but the pulse in his jaw betrayed him. "You would draw steel on the man who raised you." Dorian's face did not change. "You reached for a knife when my father spoke. My dead brother is not speaking. That thing is wearing his grief." The pup growled, tiny, impossibly. Every wolf in the nursery growled with it. Mira drew a breath. Then she snapped the silver mourning thread. The black bead fell to the floor. It cracked open. Inside was not ash. It was a drop of dried blood, sealed in silver glass. Dorian went still. Kelric's eyes flashed. Mira lifted the broken bead carefully. Whose blood? No answer. The pup pushed itself higher in her arms. Its fur began to glow from the roots, silver light spreading through white like dawn beneath snow. The small body still trembled, still fragile, but the voice inside it grew deeper. The knife entered beneath the ribs. Dorian's face went white. The northern pass was already silent. Kael'ric whispered, "Stop." Mira held the pup higher. "No," she said, though her voice shook. "Let him finish." The pup turned its silver eyes toward Dorian. "I called for you." Dorian flinched as if struck. The dead king's voice broke. "You were 10 steps away." The nursery vanished into vision. Moonlight spread across the stone floor and became snow. The cradle, the court, the silver windows all dissolved into the northern pass at night. A younger Dorian stood beyond a ridge, sword drawn, blood on his cheek, shouting for his father through storm-dark trees. Then the vision shifted. The old king knelt in the snow, one hand pressed to his side. Kael'ric stood before him, younger, his face wet with sleet, a knife dark in his hand. "You cannot give the throne to a boy who still listens to Cradle-Wolf women," young Kael'ric said. The old king spat blood. "They protect royal memory. They make royal blood confess." The knife rose. The vision shattered before it fell. Mira gasped back into the nursery. Dorian had not moved, but something in him had. The cold iron king the court knew had cracked open, and beneath him stood the boy from the snow, still hearing a call he had been told never came. Kael'ric's voice cut through the silence. "En illusion." No one believed him completely now. That made him more dangerous. He turned to the guards. "Seize the princess. Cradle-Wolf blood is forbidden in royal nurseries for a reason." Dorian's sword lifted again. "No one touch her." Kael'ric looked at him with sorrow sharpened into threat. "Then you choose a forgotten girl and a dying pup over the uncle who kept your throne alive." Dorian's hand tightened around his father's cracked ring. Mira saw the pain in him. The choice was not simple. Kael'ric had raised him, advised him, ruled beside him, built the world Dorian had inherited. If the pup spoke true, then Dorian's life had been built under his father's murderer. Mira stepped back, cradling the white pup. She did not want to be the reason the king's world collapsed, but the pup pressed its head beneath her chin. The lullaby rose again. This time, words came with it. "Hush, little wolf. Remember the moon." The nursery candles turned silver. Kael'ric's face changed. Not fear, recognition. Mira heard herself singing in a language she had never learned, and the white pup's heartbeat steadied against her chest. Dorian turned toward her slowly. Kael'ric whispered, "Your mother's blood should have died with her." The entire nursery heard him. Mira stopped singing. Dorian's eyes moved to Kael'ric. The regent realized too late what he had revealed. The white pup opened its silver eyes one final time and spoke with the dead king's voice. "Find the cradle beneath the mourning tower." Then its body went limp in Mira's arms. The silver light vanished, and every wolf in the nursery began to howl. Every wolf in the nursery began to howl. The sound rose through the stone walls, thin at first, then deeper, until it seemed the whole eastern wing of the palace had become one grieving throat. Royal wolf pups cried from their cradles. Adult guards stiffened as their inner wolves answered without permission. Even the carved wolf heads along the nursery rails shone with dim silver light. Mira held the white pup against her chest. Its body had gone limp, too light, too still. "No," she whispered. The word came out smaller than fear. She pressed 2 fingers beneath the pup's jaw, searching for breath. Nothing. Then barely a thread of warmth brushed her skin. Not enough to call life, not enough to call death. Something in between. Dorian saw her face. "Is it alive?" Mira swallowed. "I do not know." Kael'ric stepped forward. "Then mercy has arrived." Dorian's sword lifted instantly. "Stay where you are." The regent stopped, But his eyes remained on the pup, not on the blade. Your Majesty, listen to the hall. This creature has disturbed every wolf under your roof. It has spoken treason in a dead man's voice. It has awakened forbidden cradle blood in a forgotten princess. If you allow it to continue, the court will tear itself apart before dawn. Mira held the pup tighter. There it was again. The old trick of power. Call truth dangerous. Call silence mercy. Lady Isolde stood near the nursery arch, face pale but composed. Lord Ceolric is right about one thing. The pup is no longer only a pup. Whatever speaks through it has named the regent, accused the throne, and dragged Princess Mira's blood into the matter. The court will demand proof. Dorian did not look away from Ceolric. Then we find it. Ceolric's mouth tightened. Find what? The cradle beneath the morning tower. The nursery went silent except for the distant howling. Mira felt the pup twitch once in her arms. Not awake. Not gone. Reacting. Ceolric's expression softened into sorrow again, but now Mira could see the calculation under it. There is no cradle beneath the morning tower. Your father's grief made poetry of his last words. Then you will not mind if I look. A dangerous pause. Ceolric bowed his head. As you command. But his right hand moved slightly. Not toward a knife this time, toward the black signet ring on his finger. Mira noticed because forgotten girls survived by watching hands. The ring's stone pulsed once. Black. The silver glow around the pup dimmed. Mira turned sharply. His ring! Dorian followed her gaze. Ceolric stilled. Mira's voice shook but carried. When he touched it, the pup faded. The regent's eyes chilled. Careful, princess. Grief has made the king generous. It has not made you untouchable. Dorian stepped between them. She does not need to be untouchable, he said. She needs to be heard. Something moved across Mira's chest, then warmth. Fragile and dangerous. Not trust. Not yet. But the shape of it. Ceolric looked at Dorian for a long moment. Then hear this. Cradle. Wolf blood was banned because women of that line could force royal pups to speak memories better left buried. They did not protect children. They weaponized infancy. Mira's throat tightened. My mother? Ceolric's gaze cut to her. Your mother sang to dying things and called it holiness. The insult should have hurt. Instead, the lullaby stirred again beneath Mira's ribs. Hush, little wolf. Remember the moon. Dorian looked at her. Can you wake it again? Mira looked down at the pup. Its silver eyes were closed. Its tiny body barely warmed her palms. If she tried, and failed, Ceolric would call it proof. If she did nothing, the only witness would fade into silence. I do not know, she said. Isolde's voice came quietly from behind them. She may not need to. Everyone turned. For the first time, the favored Luna candidate looked unsure of the part she was meant to play. Her fingers had risen to the moonstone comb in her golden hair. The comb was carved into the shape of a sleeping wolf curled around a cradle. Mira had seen that symbol once, on the hidden corner of her mother's old portrait. Isolde realized Mira was looking. Her hand dropped. Too late. Dorian's eyes narrowed. Where did you get that comb? Isolde's polished mask returned, but not fully. It belonged to my grandmother. Ceolric's voice sharpened. Lady Isolde. The warning was soft. That made it worse. Mira took one step toward Isolde, the pup still cradled in her arms. Your grandmother was Cradle-Wolf? Isolde looked away. The court inhaled. Ceolric's hand closed around his black ring. Dorian moved before he could use it. He caught the regent's wrist and twisted. The black stone flashed once, then cracked under the pressure of the king's grip. Ceolric's calm finally broke. Do not break what you do not understand. Dorian's face was cold. I am beginning to understand enough. The cracked ring bled a thin line of shadow onto the floor. The white pup gasped. Mira nearly sobbed from relief. Its eyes did not open, but its paw pressed weakly against her wrist. The dead king's voice whispered, faint as breath through snow. Tower. Dorian released Kaelric's wrist only to seize the front of his mourning robe. What is beneath it? Kaelric smiled despite the strain. A king should know his own palace. Mira felt the pup shudder. The lullaby rose again, and this time Isolde whispered the next line before Mira could. Sleep, little heir, where wolves cannot follow. Mira stared at her. Isolde's face went white. Kaelric turned on her with murder in his eyes. Dorian saw it. So did Mira. The white pup opened one silver eye. Only one, and the dead king's voice whispered through its tiny mouth. Before the cradle wakes, the singer must be named. The nursery candles went out. In the darkness, Kaelric's broken ring spilled shadow across the floor, and something beneath the mourning tower answered with a baby's cry. Something beneath the mourning tower answered with a baby's cry. The sound did not belong in the wolf nursery. It was too small, too old, too alive. Mira clutched the white pup against her chest as the candles died one by one. Darkness folded over the nursery, broken only by the silver glow still pulsing faintly from the pup's single open eye. Around them, wolves growled low in their throats, not at Mira, not at Dorian, but at the shadow spilling from Kaelric's broken ring. Dorian released his uncle and drew his sword. Open the doors. No one moved. The nursery doors remained sealed, black veins crawling across the silver hinges. Kaelric smoothed his torn robe as if none of this had touched him. You should not chase sounds beneath old towers, your majesty. Grief makes echoes resemble truth. Mira looked at him. Then why are you afraid of an echo? His eyes cut to her. For one breath, she saw the man beneath the regent. Not only a murderer, but someone who had spent years standing on a grave and calling it foundation. Dorian turned toward Isolde. You know the song? Isolde's lips parted. Kaelric said, Lady Isolde will say nothing. That was the wrong command. Isolde's fear shifted into anger. Slow, fragile, but real. She touched the moonstone comb in her hair. The sleeping wolf curled around a cradle. My grandmother sang it to me when I was a child. She told me never to repeat it in court. Why? Mira asked. Isolde looked at the pup in Mira's arms. Because the cradle hears its own. The white pup's paw tightened weakly on Mira's sleeve. Kaelric moved. Dorian was faster. He stepped between his uncle and the women, sword angled across Kaelric's path. You will not silence another voice tonight. Kaelric's expression hardened. You think this is courage. It is the beginning of civil ruin. No, Dorian said. It is the end of your version of peace. The pup opened its other eye. Silver light spilled over Mira's hands. The nursery doors burst inward. Beyond them, the corridor to the mourning tower stretched dark and narrow, lined with wolf banners that had not moved in years. At the far end, a silver stair spiraled downward into a part of the palace. Mira had never been allowed to enter. The baby's cry came again. This time, every wolf in the nursery lowered its head. Mira stepped toward the door. Dorian turned sharply. Mira. She paused. His face was still hard, still kingly, but fear had broken through the edges. Not fear of her, fear for her. You do not have to go first, he said. Something in her chest tightened. All her life, she had been sent into rooms because no one cared what happened to her there. This was the first time anyone had told her she did not have to lead the danger. Mira looked down at the pup. Its breath trembled. If I do not, she said softly, he may stop speaking. Dorian's jaw tightened. Then he stepped beside her, not in front of her. Then we go together. The court followed at a distance, not bravely, curiously, terrified enough to stay close to the king, hungry enough for scandal to follow the forgotten princess into the dark. Isolde came too, pale but steady, one hand still gripping her moonstone comb. Ceolric walked last, guarded by Dorian's men, though his calm had returned. That frightened Mira more than panic would have. A cornered man fought wildly. A prepared man waited. The stair beneath the morning tower curved deep into the old palace bones. With every step, the pup grew warmer. Mira's lullaby returned under her breath, not fully chosen, not fully remembered. Isolde picked up the second line, voice shaking. Hush, little wolf. Remember the moon. Sleep, little heir, where wolves cannot follow. The stone walls answered. Silver marks appeared beneath layers of dust, tiny cradle symbols, wolf paw crescents, women's names scratched and then gouged away. Mira reached toward one half-erased name, and the pup whimpered. Dorian saw. Cradle, wolf, women. Isolde nodded. Erased after the old king died. Ceolric laughed softly from behind them. Erased because they meddled in succession. Mira turned. They protected memory. They protected weakness, Ceolric said. A kingdom cannot be ruled by pups crying old crimes into every cradle. Dorian's voice went cold. My father was not a crime. Ceolric's eyes flickered. Only for a moment. Enough. At the bottom of the stair, they reached a sealed chamber door made of pale wood banded in silver. No lock showed, no handle, only a carving of a sleeping wolf pup beneath a mother's hand. The white pup lifted its head. The dead king's voice whispered, Sing. Mira's throat closed. I do not know it all. Isolde stepped beside her. For once, there was no mockery between them. I do. Ceolric's guards tightened around him as he smiled. How touching. Two forgotten bloodlines pretending a nursery rhyme is law. Isolde ignored him. She began to sing. Her voice was soft and imperfect, but the chamber recognized it. Mira joined on the lines she somehow knew. The pup pressed its head to her heart, silver eyes open, breathing with the melody. The door opened. Inside was a cradle. Not large, not ornate, plain white wood, lined with faded wolf fur and silver thread. Around it lay dozens of small objects. Broken rings, torn ribbons, baby blankets, tiny bone charms, and a blood-dark royal cloak folded beneath the cradle, like something hidden in haste. Dorian stopped at the threshold. His father's ring burned silver on his finger. Mira stepped inside and felt the room inhale. The pup stirred in her arms, stronger now. The dead king's voice whispered, Witness beneath the cradle. Dorian knelt and lifted the royal cloak. Under it lay a silver memory blade. Its handle bore Ceolric's crest. The court gasped. Ceolric sighed behind them. Not defeated. Disappointed. You should have let the pup die upstairs. Mira turned. Too late. The shadow from Ceolric's broken ring had followed them down the stair. It rose behind the cradle like smoke, twisting into the shape of a black wolf with no eyes. It lunged for the white pup. Dorian shouted. Mira pulled the pup against her chest and turned her body around it. The shadow wolf struck her back. Pain tore through her. The cradle exploded with silver light, and from Mira's throat, the lullaby became a howl. The cradle exploded with silver light, and from Mira's throat, the lullaby became a howl. It was not loud like a warrior's cry. It was worse. It was small at first, raw and broken, the sound of a girl who had spent her life being quiet, finally finding a voice older than shame. The silver chamber shook. The white cradle split open at the seams. Every erased name scratched into the walls, burned bright beneath the dust. The shadow wolf recoiled from Mira's back, not because she was strong, because the pup in her arms had answered her. The dying white pup lifted its head against her chest, silver eyes blazing. Its small body still trembled, but the glow beneath its fur had deepened, turning from fragile moonlight into something sharper. A witness spirit, waking inside a helpless body. Mira dropped to one knee. Pain tore down her spine where the shadow wolf had struck her, but she did not release the pup. Dorian crossed the chamber in 3 strides and knelt beside her. Mira. His voice was hard with fear. She had never heard anyone say her name that way before, not as a summons, not as an afterthought, as if the room had become dangerous because she had been hurt. "I'm still holding him," she whispered. Dorian's jaw tightened. "I see that." He reached toward her shoulder, then stopped before touching the wound. His restraint cut through her pain more gently than comfort would have. "Tell me what you need," he said. Mira looked up. For one breath, she forgot the court behind them, the hidden cradle, the murder blade, Kelric's shadow wolf circling the room. She only saw the Alpha King kneeling before the forgotten princess and asking instead of ordering. The pup whimpered. That brought her back. "The blade," she said. Dorian turned. The silver memory blade lay beneath the cradle, its handle marked with Kelric's crest. But the blade itself was not clean metal. Moonlight moved under its surface like trapped water, carrying fragments of the night it had last been used. Kelric stood at the chamber entrance, no longer bothering to look sorrowful. The black wolf shade from his broken ring circled his feet, eyeless and hungry. "Touch that blade," he said, "and you will see what dying men believe, not what happened." Mira held the pup tighter. "Then why hide it?" Kelric's mouth thinned. Isolde stood near the wall, pale, trembling, but still holding her moonstone comb. "Because Cradle-Wolf rooms do not keep lies." Kelric turned his gaze on her. "Your grandmother should have taught you silence better." "She did," Isolde said, voice shaking. "That was the problem." Dorian picked up the memory blade. The moment his fingers closed around it, his father's ring cracked wider. Silver light ran from the ring into the blade, and the hidden chamber vanished into snow. The vision took them all. The northern pass appeared around them, storm, dark and frozen. The old king staggered beneath black pines, one hand pressed to his bleeding side. Young Dorian shouted somewhere beyond the ridge, close enough to hear, too far to see. Kelric stood before his brother with the memory blade in hand. "You will not give the throne to him while Cradle-Wolf blood still guards the royal nursery," young Kelric said. The old king spat blood into the snow. "Dorian is my son. He is a boy who listens when women sing to dying pups. He listens because he is not yet ruined." Kelric's face twisted. Then the memory blade rose. Mira tried to look away, but the pup pressed its paw to her wrist. "Witness," the dead king's voice whispered. The blade entered beneath the old king's ribs. Dorian made no sound. That was worse than screaming. The vision shifted. The old king fell, but before his body struck the snow, a white wolf spirit tore from his chest, small and bright, not fleeing death, but carrying memory. It ran toward the palace, toward the nursery, toward the cradle beneath the mourning tower. Young Kelric saw it. "Catch it," he ordered. Black ring shadow spilled from his hand and became the eyeless wolf. It lunged, but the spirit reached the cradle first, folding itself into the smallest white pup of the royal litter. The vision shattered. They stood again in the hidden chamber. Dorian's hand was bleeding around the memory blade. The court stood silent behind him. No one laughed now. No one called the pup death-mad. Kelric's face had gone still. A memory without context is a weapon. Dorian arose. Slowly, the room changed with him. He no longer looked like a king hearing treason. He looked like a son standing in the room where grief had been buried alive. "You killed my father," Dorian said. Kelric lifted his chin. "I saved your reign." Dorian's sword came up, but Mira spoke first. "No." The word surprised even her. Dorian stopped. blade half drawn. Mira struggled to stand, the pup cradled in both arms. Pain burned across her back, but the lullaby held her upright. If you kill him now, he becomes the only proof. Kaelric smiled faintly. Listen to the forgotten princess, Your Majesty. She understands weakness. Mira turned toward him. For the first time, his words did not make her smaller. No, she said. I understand witness. The pup opened its silver eyes. The cradle behind them began to rock, empty, but moving. A woman's voice rose from the chamber walls, soft as a lullaby and sharp as moonlight. Cradle blood does not accuse for vengeance. Mira froze. She knew that voice without remembering it. Mother. The silver names on the walls burned brighter. The voice continued. It wakes what murder tried to orphan. Dorian looked at Mira. Kaelric's calm cracked at last. That bloodline was buried. Mira held the pup higher, then let it rise. The cradle split open completely. Inside, beneath layers of old fur and moon thread, lay a second object, a baby blanket, blue-gray, the same faded shade as Mira's dress. Wrapped inside it was a tiny silver bracelet engraved with her mother's crest. Isolde gasped. That is the Cradle-Wolf mark. Mira stared at the bracelet, her whole life tilted. She had thought she was forgotten because no one needed her, but someone had hidden her where court eyes would not look. The pup's voice came again, still the dead king's, but fading now. Mira Vale, daughter of the cradle line. The shadow wolf snarled. Kaelric lifted his broken ring, and darkness surged from it toward the pup, the cradle, the bracelet, and Mira all at once. Dorian stepped beside her, not in front, beside. His sword burned silver in the cradle light. You will not bury her too. The shadow struck. Mira sung, and every royal cradle in the palace woke at once. Every royal cradle in the palace woke at once. The sound rose through the hidden chamber like 100 small wooden hearts beginning to beat after years of silence. Above them, somewhere in the nursery. Beyond that, in sealed rooms, in forgotten storage halls, in old queen chambers locked since morning. Every cradle carved with royal wolf marks began to rock, not violently, patiently, as if they had been waiting for Mira's song. Kaelric's shadow wolf recoiled. The darkness pouring from his broken ring struck the silver cradle light and split apart, hissing like smoke against snow. Mira kept singing, though her voice shook. The white pup trembled in her arms, eyes burning silver. The tiny bracelet inside the blue-gray blanket glowed with her mother's crest. Dorian stood beside her, sword raised, his face carved from grief and fury. Kaelric stared at the waking cradle, as if the palace itself had betrayed him. No, he whispered. Mira heard the real fear in it. Not fear of death, fear of memory. The cradle behind her rocked harder. From inside its broken frame, silver threads rose and spread across the chamber walls, connecting to the half-erased names of Cradle-Wolf women. The names brightened one by one. Aurelia Vale, Sera Moonrest, Ilune Voss. Mira froze at the last name. Voss. Isolde saw it too. Her face went white. Kaelric's head snapped toward the wall, hatred flashing across his face. That name should have stayed buried. Isolde's hand tightened around her moonstone comb. Ilin Voss was my grandmother. She was a traitor to her house. She was Cradle-Wolf. She made dying pups speak against kings. Mira's voice came soft but steady. No. She made murder answer. The chamber went still. The white pup pressed its paw against Mira's wrist, and the lullaby shifted. It was no longer only song. It was command, memory, cradle law. Silver light spilled upward through the ceiling. A distant crash echoed above. Dorian turned toward the stair. The nursery. They ran. Dorian kept pace beside Mira, not ahead of her, one hand ready but not touching unless she stumbled. Isolde followed close behind, pale and breathless. Guards dragged Ceolric after them, though his broken ring still leaked shadow onto the steps. When they reached the wolf nursery, the court had fallen into panic. Every cradle was rocking. Some were empty. Some held royal pups. Some had been covered for years beneath mourning cloth. Silver light rose from each one, forming ghostly images above them. Old royal births, hidden deaths, pups taken too soon, women singing over cradles, while men in council robes waited outside with knives, chains, and sealed orders. The nobles pressed themselves against the walls. Lady Isolde's face twisted as she saw her own grandmother in one vision, younger and afraid, placing the moonstone comb into a child's hand before soldiers dragged her away. Mira's heart ached. How many women had been erased for making truth speak before men approved it? The white pup lifted its head. Its body was still fragile, but its eyes no longer dimmed. The dead king's witness spirit inside it looked at Dorian. Not only me, it said. Dorian's face hardened. What else did he bury? The cradles answered. One by one, the visions turned toward Ceolric, a stillborn heir whose breath returned after a Cradle-Wolf woman sang, only to vanish from the record the next day. A royal pup declared weak because it carried a memory of poisoned wine. A queen's daughter hidden in servants' quarters because her cradle named a council murderer. Mira felt the room tilt, not from fear, from recognition. She had thought her forgotten life was an accident of court neglect, a sad story, a quiet injustice. It had been strategy. Cradle-Wolf girls were not simply ignored. They were scattered before they could sing. Ceolric laughed softly. It was a terrible sound in a room full of waking cradles. And what would you have done? He asked Dorian. Let every royal cradle become a courtroom? Let every pup cry old blood into succession? Kingdoms cannot survive memory without discipline. Dorian turned toward him slowly. My father died because you feared what memory would say. I killed one king to prevent 100 claims. The court gasped. Ceolric stopped. His own words hung in the air. The white pup's silver eyes blazed. Mira's lullaby caught the confession and carried it into every cradle. The rocking stopped. Silence struck the nursery. Then every cradle spoke with one voice. Witness accepted. Ceolric's face drained of color. Dorian lifted his father's cracked ring. The silver band, split by the pup's first words, now glowed with cradle light. You confessed before royal memory, Dorian said. Ceolric's expression twisted. I confessed necessity. No, Mira said. You confessed fear. He looked at her then with pure hatred. Forgotten little princess. You think a song makes you powerful. Mira felt the old wound open. Forgotten, little, useless, except when ceremony required a body. But the white pup breathed against her heart, and all around her, cradles that had held royal secrets for generations waited for her voice. No, she said. Her song makes the dead harder to silence. The court heard her. Dorian did too. Something in his face changed. Not love. Not yet. Something deeper than admiration, and more dangerous than pity. Belief. Ceolric saw it and struck the only place he had left. He turned to the nobles. If she sings again, every house here may lose an heir, a title, a marriage claim, a treaty. Cradle-Wolf blood does not choose truth gently. It will unmake all of you. Fear moved through the room. Fussed. Old. Useful. Dorian stepped forward. But Mira spoke before he could. Then let the ones who fear memory tell us what they buried. No one answered. That answer was enough. Ceolric's shadow wolf rose behind him, larger now, feeding on the court's fear. Its eyeless head turned toward Mira and the pup. Dorian's sword flared silver. But Ceolric smiled. You still do not understand. That pup is the last witness holding your father's spirit. If it dies, the confession dies with it. The shadow wolf lunged. Dorian moved. Mira sang. Isolde stepped into the path and raised her moonstone comb. The comb split with silver light, and the ghostly image of Eileen Voss appeared behind her granddaughter, hands lifted in the old cradle sign. The shadow wolf struck the light and screamed. Isolde fell to her knees. Mira caught her with one arm while holding the pup with the other. Dorian drove his sword through the shadow wolf's chest. Black smoke burst across the nursery. Kelric staggered, clutching his broken ring. But the white pup suddenly went cold in Mira's arms. Its silver eyes dimmed. Mira's song faltered. Dorian turned sharply. "Mira?" The pup gave one tiny breath. Then the dead king's voice whispered one final command. "Before I fade, bring me to the throne that heard the lie." Kelric smiled through bloodless lips, because the throne room was where his guards still waited, and where the court would have to choose whether to hear the dead king publicly. "Before I fade, bring me to the throne that heard the lie." The white pup's voice was barely more than breath, but every person in the nursery heard it. Dorian went still. The throne room, the place where his father's death had been announced, the place where Kelric had placed the crown on his head, the place where the court had bowed to a boy king and accepted a story written by the man who had murdered the old one. Mira felt the pup growing colder against her chest. Its silver eyes flickered. Not dead, not alive enough, waiting for the final witness. Kelric smiled through the black blood at the corner of his mouth. "Yes, take it to the throne. Let every noble house hear a dying pup accuse the regent who kept this kingdom from tearing itself apart." Dorian's sword lifted. "You are very calm for a guilty man." "I am calm because I understand courts." Kelric looked past him to the gathered nobles. "They do not fear murder as much as they fear what truth will cost them." No one denied it. That silence chilled Mira more than any accusation. Isolde leaned against the cradle rail, pale from the force of her grandmother's comb breaking. "He has guards in the throne room." Dorian did not look away from Kelric. "Then they will stand aside." Kelric laughed softly. "Will they? Or will they protect the only order they have ever known?" The pup gave another tiny breath. Mira made her choice before fear could argue. "We go." Dorian turned toward her. She saw the instinct in him, the desire to order her to stay, to take the pup himself, to place his body between her and whatever waited beyond the nursery doors. But he had learned too much tonight to cage her in the name of protection. He only nodded. Together, the path to the throne room felt longer than any corridor Mira had ever walked. The court followed behind them in a fractured procession, nobles whispering, guards watching Dorian and Kelric in equal fear, Isolde walking beside Mira, with the broken moonstone comb clutched in one hand. Kelric came under guard, but even bound, he moved like a man, escorted to a stage he had built himself. The white pup lay silent in Mira's arms. Too silent. She sang under her breath. "Hush, little wolf. Remember the moon. Sleep, little air, where wolves cannot follow." The pup's heartbeat fluttered once. Dorian heard the song and looked at her. Not with suspicion, with pain. "How did we forget your line?" he asked quietly. Mira kept walking. "You did not forget." The words hurt to say. "Someone taught you where not to look." Dorian's jaw tightened, and he did not defend himself. That mattered. At the throne room doors, they found Kelric's guards already waiting. 2 rows of black-armored wolves blocked the entrance, spears crossed, faces hidden behind silver helms. Behind them, through the open crack between the doors, Mira saw the Moonfang throne beneath banners of morning black. Kelric's smile sharpened. Dorian stepped forward. "Open the doors." No one moved. The captain of the guard lowered his head, but not his spear. "Your Majesty, the Lord Regent ordered the throne sealed until dawn." Dorian's eyes went cold. I am the king. The captain swallowed. And he is the keeper of emergency law. The words struck the corridor like iron. Emergency law. The same kind of law that made forgotten girls disappear politely. The kind that turned murder into stability and silence into duty. Mira felt the pup stir weakly. It opened one silver eye. The dead king's voice whispered, I crowned no emergency above my son. The guards flinched. Dorian held out his hand toward Mira, not to take the pup, but to let the court see what he chose to stand beside. Mira stepped forward. The white pup lifted its head just enough for the silver light in its eye to touch the guards' helms. One by one, the wolves inside their shadows lowered their heads. The captain's spear trembled. Caelric snapped. Hold the door. Mira looked at the captain. If you fear the pup is lying, let it speak where the lie was first told. The captain stared at her. A forgotten princess. A dying pup. A king with his father's cracked ring bleeding silver on his hand. Then he lowered his spear. The others followed. Caelric's face hardened. The throne room doors opened. Inside, the chamber was filled with nobles who had fled ahead, council elders, Caelric's loyal soldiers, and priests of the Moon Court. Every torch burned low. The Moonfang throne stood at the far end, carved from black stone and silver bone, draped in the old king's mourning banner. Dorian entered first. Mira walked beside him. The court turned. Whispers spread like frost. Caelric raised his voice before Dorian could speak. My lords, my ladies, witness the danger I warned you of. Forbidden Cradle-Wolf blood has awakened a dying pup and filled it with treason. The king, in grief, has brought that treason before the throne. Fear moved through the room. Caelric fed it well. Mira held the pup tighter, but her arms were shaking. The pup felt lighter with every breath. If it faded before speaking, Caelric would win the room. The memory blade, the cradle, the broken ring, he would bury all of it beneath doubt and procedure. Dorian turned toward the throne. His father's cracked ring burned brighter. 6 years ago, he said, voice carrying through the chamber. I was told my father died at the northern pass. The room went silent. Tonight, the last white pup of his bloodline spoke with his voice. A council elder stepped forward. Your Majesty, grief may... Dorian looked at him. The elder stopped. Mira stepped toward the throne. The pup did not move. Panic clawed up her throat. She sang again. Softer. Hush, little wolf. Remember the moon. This time, the throne answered. A silver line appeared across the black stone seat. Caelric's eyes flashed. Mira saw it. So did Dorian. The Moonfang throne had heard the Li. Mira climbed the first step with the pup in her arms. Caelric shouted, Stop her! His loyal guards lunged. Dorian moved, sword flashing silver. Isolde stepped behind Mira and began the second line of the lullaby. Voice trembling, but clear. Sleep, little heir, where wolves cannot follow. The throne cracked open with moonlight. The white pup lifted its head. Both silver eyes opened, and when it spoke, the dead king's voice filled the throne room one final time. My son was crowned over my blood. The mourning banner above the throne tore in half. Beneath it, hidden in the black stone, a dark stain spread like an old wound. The pup's voice deepened. Caelric Voss killed me here before they carried my body north. The court erupted. Dorian stared at the stain beneath the throne. Mira could barely breathe. The northern pass had never been the murder place, only the story. Caelric's smile vanished. The pup turned its head toward the regent. And the throne remembers who knelt in my blood. And the throne remembers who knelt in my blood. The white pup's final words shattered the throne room. Nobles screamed. Council elders stumbled back from the Moonfang throne as if the black stone had become a corpse. The torn mourning banner hung in 2 pieces above the dais, and beneath it, the dark stain in the throne's base spread wider, wet with silver light. Not fresh blood, remembered blood. Dorian stood at the foot of the throne, his father's cracked ring burning around his finger. His sword hung at his side, but he did not move. He stared at the stain as if 6 years of grief had been torn open and placed before him under court witness. Mira held the white pup on the first step. Its eyes were still silver, but dimmer now. Its little body shook with every breath. Too much truth had passed through something too small. Kael'ric was silent. That frightened Mira most. A guilty man should have shouted, denied, wept, raged. Kael'ric did none of those things. He looked at the blood memory beneath the throne, then at the nobles, and the grief mask returned to his face with terrible ease. "My lords," he said softly, "you have seen why Cradle-Wolf blood was forbidden." The room went still. Kael'ric lifted his bound hands slightly. A dying pup, a forgotten princess, and a broken cradle song have turned the king's grief into public madness. They have made the throne bleed illusion. They have made a son hear accusation where memory should rest. Dorian's head turned, slowly. Kael'ric met his gaze with sorrow sharpened into strategy. "I loved your father." The pup growled weakly in Mira's arms. Kael'ric ignored it. "And I have loved you as my own son. That is why I will do what you are too wounded to do." He looked to the council elders. "Invoke emergency law." The words fell like iron. Several elders froze. One old woman in silver robes whispered, "My lord, after what the throne has shown." "What has it shown?" Kael'ric snapped. "A stain? A voice through a dying animal? A cradle charm awakened by a girl whose bloodline was banned because it made royal pups into weapons?" Fear moved through the room again. Mira felt it gathering. Kael'ric knew exactly how to make truth look dangerous. He did not need to prove innocence. He only needed to make the court afraid of what proof would cost. One council elder raised a trembling hand. "Emergency law permits containment of forbidden blood during royal instability." Dorian's sword lifted. The elder flinched. But Kael'ric smiled. "There it is," he said. "Royal instability." Dorian's face hardened. "You murdered my father on this floor, and you are about to tear your kingdom apart because a pup told you so." Mira felt the white pup shudder. Its silver eyes flickered. The dead king's voice was almost gone. She looked at Dorian and saw the trap closing around him. If he struck Kael'ric now, he would look like a grieving son killing the regent without trial. If he hesitated, Kael'ric would use law to seize Mira, silence the pup, and bury the throne memory before dawn. The court waited for Dorian to be either too violent or too weak. Mira stepped higher onto the dais. Every eye turned to her. Forgotten princess, quiet branch, spare girl, the daughter of a dead second queen. Her knees shook beneath her dress, but she held the pup close and faced the court. "You are afraid the pup is lying," she said. "Then let the throne speak without him." Kael'ric's eyes narrowed. "You do not command the throne." "No," Mira said. "But your brother's blood does." She knelt on the step where the silver stain had spread and placed one hand against the black stone. Dorian moved at once. "Mira." She looked back. There was fear in his voice, but not command. "What will it cost?" he asked. The question cut deeper than concern. He had learned to ask before letting her bleed for his truth. Mira looked down at the pup. Its tiny heart fluttered under her palm. The lullaby stirred in her throat. Older than memory, older than humiliation. "I do not know," she said honestly. Kael'ric smiled. "Then let me answer. It will cost her mind. Cradle-Wolf women who force royal memory open do not survive whole. Ask why so few of them remain." Isolde stepped forward, face pale. "Because men like you hunted them. Because they made kingdoms ungovernable. Because they made murder answer," Mira said. The throne pulsed beneath her hand. A sound rose from it. Not a voice yet. A heartbeat. Dorian looked at the council. No one touches her. Kaelric's expression darkened. Then you choose her again. Dorian did not look away from Mira. I choose witness. The word struck the room. Mira closed her eyes and began to sing. Hush, little wolf. Remember the moon. The throne answered with silver light. Sleep, little heir, where wolves cannot follow. The dark stain beneath the throne spread into shape. A man's hand pressed in blood against the stone. Then another shape appeared beside it. A knee print. Kaelric's. The court gasped. Mira kept singing. Pain drove through her skull like a blade of moonlight. She saw fragments the old king stumbling through the throne room, blood on his fingers. Kaelric dragging him away from the dais. Council bells silenced. Black cloth thrown over the stain before young Dorian was brought in for coronation. The throne had heard everything, but no one had asked it to remember. Mira's voice faltered. The pup pressed its head to her wrist. Dorian stepped onto the dais beside her and placed his father's cracked ring against the blood memory. I ask, he said. The Moonfang throne split open with silver light. The old king's voice filled the room not through the pup this time, but through the throne itself. My brother killed me, beneath my crown. Kaelric's face finally broke. The voice continued. He crowned my son over blood, and called it peace. The council elders fell to their knees. Dorian stared at the throne, grief and fury shaking through him, but he did not raise his sword. Kaelric saw that restraint and panicked at last. He tore free from the guards with strength. The shadow ring had left in him, and lunged toward Mira. Dorian moved. So did Isolde. But the white pup lifted its head first. Its silver eyes blazed one last time. The dead king's voice whispered through its tiny mouth. Not the girl. The pup leaped from Mira's arms. Too small, too weak, too late. It struck Kaelric's chest in a burst of silver light. The regent screamed as the witness spirit entered the black shadow, still clinging to his heart. Mira reached for the pup. Her hands closed on empty air. The throne room went white, and inside the light, the murdered king stood behind his son. Inside the light, the murdered king stood behind his son. The throne room forgot how to breathe. He was not alive. No one could mistake him for flesh. His body was made of silver memory and moonlit blood, his edges faint where death had worn him thin. Yet the face was unmistakable. King Alaric Vale, the ruler whose portrait hung above the Western War Hall. The father Dorian had mourned for 6 years. The man Kaelric had buried beneath a lie. Dorian did not turn at first. He stood frozen with his sword in one hand, and his father's cracked ring burning on the other, as if moving too quickly might make the vision vanish. Then the dead king spoke. My son, Dorian's face broke, only for a heartbeat. But Mira saw it. The Alpha King, iron-born, feared by every pack under Verhold's moon, looked suddenly like the boy in the vision, 10 steps away in the snow. Still hearing a call, no one let him answer. Father, Dorian said. The word was barely sound. Kaelric screamed. The white pup was gone from Mira's arms, but its silver light had not vanished. It burned inside the black shadow clinging to Kaelric's chest, trapping him in place before the throne. The regent clawed at his own ribs, but the witness spirit held fast, turning every shadow inside him silver at the edges. You cannot judge me with a ghost, Kaelric snarled. King Alaric's eyes moved to him. I am not the judge. The Moonfang throne pulsed beneath the old bloodstain. The council elders bowed their heads, trembling. Alaric lifted one silver hand and pointed to the throne room floor. The throne remembers. The cradles remember. The pup carried what murder could not silence. Let the living decide whether they still prefer the lie. Mira's knees nearly gave. The pup. She looked down at her empty arms. For only one night, She had held something small and dying, and kept it alive long enough to speak. She had felt its heartbeat steady under her palm. She had sung to it. She had thought, foolishly, that if truth won, perhaps the pup would live too. Now there was nothing against her chest but cold air. A sound escaped her. Not a sob. Almost. Dorian heard it, even with his father's ghost behind him, even with Caelric bound before the throne. He looked toward her. The grief in his eyes changed. Not less for his father. Vida, Mira, he said. She shook her head once, because if he spoke gently, she might break. Caelric saw the moment, and struck where grief was softest. The pup is dead because of her, he said, voice ragged but loud enough for the room. Cradle. Wolf blood wakes witnesses by consuming them. She did not save the creature. She used it. Mira flinched. The accusation found a wound too new to defend. Dorian turned on him. Enough. Caelric laughed, breathless. Yes. Silence me. Kill me. Prove you are your father's son, at last. Dorian's sword lifted. Every noble in the throne room leaned forward in fear. This was what Caelric wanted. Mira saw it a heartbeat before the blade could fall. If Dorian killed him now, the regent would become a martyr to half the court. Emergency law would rise around his blood. The confession would become chaos. The throne would have truth, but the kingdom would inherit doubt. Mira stepped forward. Pain still burned through her back. Her arms felt empty. Her voice felt scraped raw from singing. But the cradle light had not left her blood. Do not give him the ending he prepared, she said. Dorian's sword stopped. Caelric's eyes cut to her. Mira faced him, though her hands trembled. He wants death, because death is another kind of silence. The throne room went still. King Alaric looked at her with something like recognition. Dorian lowered the sword slowly, not sheathing it, choosing. You will stand trial, Dorian said to Caelric. Not in a sealed chamber. Not under emergency law. Before the throne, the cradles, the council, and every house that knelt to your lie. Caelric's face twisted. A trial will split the realm. No, Mira said. The murder already did. Silver light moved across the floor toward her feet. The Moonfang throne answered her. Not with words, with witness. Every cradle in the palace began to rock again. The sound rolled into the throne room from distant halls, soft at first, then stronger, like hundreds of tiny hearts beating beneath the stone. The nobles heard it. So did Caelric. His bound shadow writhed. King Alaric's ghost turned toward Mira. Cradle daughter. The words moved through her, like warmth and grief together. Mira bowed her head. I could not save the pup. You woke him. That is not the same. No, the dead king said gently. It is not. The honesty nearly broke her. Then he looked toward the silver light inside Caelric's chest. But the pup was not only a body. He was a cradle for memory, and memory once witnessed does not die the same way. The light in Caelric's chest stirred. Mira looked up. A small white shape appeared within the silver glow, faint as breath on winter glass. Not alive in the way it had been, not solid enough to hold. But there, the white pup opened its silver eyes. Mira's breath caught. Dorian stared. The pup stepped out of Caelric's shadow and onto the throne room floor, transparent and trembling. Its paws left tiny silver prints on the black stone. Caelric sagged as the witness spirit released his chest, but the guards seized him before he fell. The pup walked to Mira. She knelt before she realized she had moved. It pressed its ghostly forehead to her empty palms. No weight, no warmth, but recognition. The lullaby rose in her throat again, softer now. Hush, little wolf. Remember the moon. The pup closed its eyes. Then its silver body dissolved into sparks. flowing not into death, but into the Moonfang throne, the royal cradles, and the cracked ring on Dorian's hand. The dead king's voice spoke one last time through the room. Witness kept. King Alaric's ghost began to fade. Dorian turned sharply. No. The dead king looked at him with sorrow and pride. You heard me this time. Dorian's mouth tightened. The words were mercy and wound together. Alaric's gaze moved from Dorian to Mira. Guard the singer, not because she is fragile, because kingdoms fear what remembers. Then he vanished. The silver light dimmed. The throne room remained. Broken. Awake. Dorian stood in the silence, breathing like a man holding back a storm. Mira rose slowly, her hands still tingling from where the pup's ghost had touched them. Caelric straightened between the guards, pale but not defeated. You think this ends with a ghost blessing a forgotten girl? He whispered. The houses will not accept Cradle-Wolf law. They buried that bloodline once. They will do it again. Mira looked at the nobles. Some were afraid. Some ashamed. Some already calculating how much truth would cost them. Caelric was not entirely wrong. That made the next step more dangerous. Isolde came to Mira's side, holding the broken moonstone comb. Then the singer must be named before they bury her. The cradles answered from every corridor. Dorian turned toward Mira. The court waited, and for the first time in her life, the forgotten princess realized being remembered could be as dangerous as being erased. For the first time in her life, the forgotten princess realized being remembered could be as dangerous as being erased. The throne room watched her, not with pity now, not with late-arriving cruelty, with fear. Mira Vale stood below the Moonfang throne, with cradle light still trembling beneath her skin, her blue-gray dress torn at the shoulder, her back burning from the shadow wolf's strike, and her hands empty where the white pup had dissolved into silver memory. Around her, the palace cradles continued to rock from distant rooms, each small wooden heartbeat carrying witness through the walls. Isolde stood beside her, pale but steady, the broken moonstone comb in her hand. The singer must be named, she said again. A council elder rose slowly. Cradle. Wolf blood was banned from royal succession. Dorian turned his head. The elder swallowed, but continued. If Princess Mira is named before the throne, every old cradle law may reopen. Every hidden birth, every nursery witness, every royal death. Good, Dorian said. The word cut through the room. The elder fell silent. Caelric gave a low laugh between the guards. You hear him? He would drown the kingdom in old lullabies because a ghost touched his grief. Dorian descended the first step from the throne. His father's cracked ring glowed silver around his finger. He looked less like the Iron King the court feared, and more like a man standing at the edge of everything he had been taught to protect. Not grief, he said. Evidence. The Moonfang throne pulsed once. Silver light crossed the dark bloodstain beneath it. Caelric's smile thinned. Dorian faced the court. Lord Regent Caelric Voss confessed before royal cradles. The Moonfang throne confirmed the murder. The witness, spirit of King Alaric, named him before this room. A nobleman near the pillars whispered, The realm will fracture. Mira looked at him. It was strange how calm she felt. Perhaps because she had spent her life fractured quietly. Then stop asking silence to hold it together, she said. The nobleman looked away. A murmur passed through the room, but it did not grow into challenge. Not yet. The court was too stunned, too exposed, too uncertain which fear would survive the dawn. Dorian looked at Mira, not commanding, asking without words. She understood. If he named her now, some would call it manipulation. A grieving king elevating the woman who carried his father's witness. If she refused, Caelric's allies would bury Cradle-Wolf blood under procedure before sunrise. Mira thought of the white pup's silver eyes, of her mother's bracelet hidden beneath the cradle, of every erased name scratched into the mourning tower walls. Then she stepped forward. "My mother was of the cradle line," she said. "My blood woke the pup. My song woke the throne. I did not come here to claim power over royal memory." She looked at Caelric. "I came because you tried to kill the last witness small enough for the court to ignore." The cradles rocked harder. Dorian's ring flashed. Isolde lifted the broken comb. "I name what my grandmother hid to save me. Eileen Voss was Cradle-Wolf blood. She was erased by my house, and I stand witness to Princess Mira Vale, daughter of the cradle line." The room inhaled. A woman from the western benches stood, old, white-haired, shaking. "I remember the second Queen's lullaby," she whispered. "We were ordered never to sing it after her death." Another voice rose. "My sister served in the nursery. She vanished the night King Alaric died." Another. "My son was declared stillborn before I heard him cry." The throne room changed. Not all at once. Truth never entered a room cleanly. It came like thaw through frozen stone. Slow, cracking, impossible to stop once begun. Caelric struggled against the guards. Enough. But enough belonged to him no longer. Mira felt the lullaby rise again. She did not sing loudly. She did not need to. The cradles sang with her now, soft and silver, carrying every witness into the throne room. "Hush, little wolf. Remember the moon. Sleep, little heir. Where wolves cannot follow." Dorian stepped to her side. "My father told me to guard the singer," he said, voice low enough that only she heard. Mira looked at him. "And will you?" "Yes." Her chest tightened. Then he added, "If you choose to stand where I can." The difference mattered. It mattered enough that she had to look away for one breath. Dorian turned to the court. "Princess Mira Vale will be restored to full royal record as daughter of Queen Selene Vale and blood of the Cradle-Wolf line. Her title will not be used to cage her, marry her, silence her, or turn her song into a court weapon." A council elder opened his mouth. Dorian's eyes went cold. The elder closed it. Caelric's voice cut through the room. "You cannot restore forbidden blood by decree." Mira answered before Dorian could. "No, but I can restore it by witness." She walked up the throne steps. No one stopped her. Not because they loved her, because every cradle in the palace rocked with her footsteps. At the base of the Moonfang throne, she placed her hand over the silver blood memory where King Alaric had died. Pain flashed through her palm, sharp and cold, but she did not pull away. "I name what was buried," she said. "King Alaric Vere was murdered beneath his crown by Caelric Voss. The white pup carried his witness. The cradle line preserved his final memory. And I, Mira Vale, forgotten princess of this house, refused to let silence inherit the throne." The Moonfang throne blazed silver. Caelric screamed, not from pain, from exposure. Every shadow clinging to his robes peeled back, revealing hidden oath marks beneath. Emergency seals, false mourning vows, blood, law signatures signed in his brother's name after death. The room saw all of it. The quiet machinery of his lie. Dorian looked to the guards. "Take him, this time." No one hesitated. Caelric was dragged to his knees before the throne he had stained. He looked at Dorian with hatred sharpened into prophecy. "You will regret making memory law." Dorian's face did not change. "No, I regret letting fear be law for 6 years." The guards pulled Caelric away. His voice echoed until the doors closed behind him. Then silence fell. Not the old silence. Not the silence that erased girls and covered blood. A new silence. One waiting to be filled carefully. Dorian turned to Mira. The court leaned in, hungry again for a shape it understood. They expected him to claim her now, to call her savior, bride, chosen mate, future Luna, to transform witness into romance before anyone had to sit with the weight of what had been revealed. Dorian did none of that. He stopped one step below her. "Mira Vale," he said, "I owe you more than honor before a frightened court." Her throat tightened. "Yes," she said. He accepted the answer without flinching. "I owe you apology. Protection that does not become possession. Records opened, names restored, cradle rooms unsealed, and the truth of what happened to every woman your bloodline buried." Mira looked at him then. The king, who had once seemed made of iron, now stood beneath a cracked throne with grief in his eyes, and his father's broken ring on his hand. He was still dangerous, still powerful, still a man raised by the murderer he had trusted. But he was listening. That was where trust might begin. "Start with my mother," she said. Dorian bowed his head. "At dawn. And Isolde's grandmother." "Yes. And the pup." His face tightened. Mira's voice softened despite herself. He should have a name. Dorian looked toward the throne, where tiny silver paw prints still glowed on the black stone. For a moment, he could not speak. Then he said, "Aaron, my father's childhood name." The paw prints brightened once. Mira closed her eyes. Not happy, not whole, but witnessed. Dawn touched the throne room windows, pale and cold. Beyond the palace, wolves began to howl, not in panic now, but in answer. The royal cradles slowed one by one, their work unfinished but no longer sleeping. Isolde stood quietly near the dais, no longer the polished Luna candidate, no longer untouched by what her house had hidden. When she met Mira's eyes, there was shame there, and possibility. Dorian offered Mira his hand. He did not reach for her. He simply opened his palm. Mira looked at it for a long moment. Then she placed her fingers in his. No cradle forced her. No court named it. No dead king spoke through the room. It was only a beginning, fragile as a pup's breath and dangerous as memory. Dorian's thumb brushed once over her knuckles. "I will not ask you to forgive the throne today," he said. "Good," Mira answered. A faint, wounded smile touched his mouth. "Tomorrow? Tomorrow," she said. "You may ask as Dorian, not Alpha King, not ruler, not the son of the murdered king. Dorian." His hand tightened slightly around hers, careful enough that she could leave. Behind them, the Moonfang throne remained cracked, its blood memory uncovered, its lie broken. Before them, the palace waited with sealed rooms, old cradle ledgers, and names that had not been spoken in years. Mira stepped down from the dais beside him. For the first time, the court did not look through her. Some looked afraid, some ashamed, some resentful, but they looked, and when the wolves of Verhold lowered their heads as she passed, no one called her forgotten. The cradles would not allow the lie.